Local? No.
Eric's buddy Steve.
Oh. Why don't you get a shirt by him?
Well, I kissed his ass a little bit. You know what I mean? Sometimes you gotta kiss their asses to get shirts. Which I'm not opposed to doing. You know what I mean? I can be that guy. Welcome to South Omaha Speed. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about banjos. I had a guy hit me up on Instagram, sent me a message, one fast C6 maybe, Ryan out of Oakland. Cool guy. Saw some pictures of the car, was writing me about it, super excited. And I was telling him about it and, building the traditional style, period correct hot rod. And I mentioned the Banjo Rind that I was going to put in it. And so he's like, oh, Banjo, what's that? And he's kind of a car guy, but doesn't know anything about this early stuff. And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do a video real quick, just talk about the Banjo Rinds. And if you're thinking about building a car and you're not sure what to look for as far as a banjo goes, I got a schematic that I drew on the toolbox over here that might help. It's like the crazy hot matrix that you may have seen before on YouTube, but it's actually for banjos. So we're going to talk about what you're looking for if you're looking for a banjo, what you could probably stay away from, depending on what you're doing. So it might help you. So let me get the camera repositioned and we'll get set up on the grease board and we'll walk through that schematic real quick. Okay, so we got the camera positioned. We're looking at the matrix. Across the top here are the years. These are the years here that old Henry was building all that hot rod for. Gold! It's glorious. And then so in 1927, this was the last year for your Model T. So really cool bodies came out of the T era. Not a lot of running gear being used on hot rod V8 builds, but some guys building some cool old vintage race cars with that stuff. And then you got your Model A. Was the first year was 28. The first year for your Banjo was here in 1928. It was a smaller Banjo. They were running 4 cylinders originally in these cars. I mean, of course, Model A, tons of people putting V8s in them, of course, over the years, and probably running the early Banjos and tearing them up and just put another one in it, right? I mean, back in the day, they were just plentiful, these old Banjos. So then you get to 1932, and you get the V8s released. So thank you, Henry, for that. Changed the world. Average man could get his hand on a V8 motor. They were for the masses then, so that's cool. So 32, 33, 34. Still kind of a light duty considered banjo, I guess. But these rims are kind of special because they got special spring perches on it that take a special curved spring from the top. That buggy spring in the back's actually got a curve in it if you're looking from the top, and it fits the old frames with the original cross members in them, so it fits in there real nice. So of course they came out with the V8, so you could run these obviously with a V8 and even a little hopped up V8 if you didn't beat on it too hard, it's going to live, right? Like anything. But then when you get down here in 1935, Ford added a third pinion bearing in the banjos. And so 35 all the way till 41, or at least 40 are the same width. I think they're 59.5. I actually have to have a 40 here on the floor is what I'm going to use in the coupe. 41, I'm not sure if it might be a little wider. Can't say for sure. But 39 was the first year for juice brakes. So basically 38 and older, all of this is mechanical brakes. So when you're walking up to a banjo and it's got juice brakes on it, most likely it's going to be a 39 or newer. And a 39, I think, is still a wide 5. I think the first year for the 5-lug, 5 on 5.5 was 40. So if you're looking at a 5-lug, 5 and 5.5 rear end, it's got studs on there for your wheels and not the 5-lug, or sorry, the wide 5 pattern. So you're looking from here up, and so you're talking 59.5 before the war, I guess, and then they were making planes and tanks here for World War II, saving the world, Thank you, Henry. And then 46 to 48. They're a little wider, 61, like 3/4 inch on each side, but still very, doable as far as the width on an early hot rod, of course. And so if we look at this picture down here, I kind of drew a schematic of how that pinion gear works with the ring gear inside, and talking about this third bearing, I kind of show it here. So here's the actual pinion that's out of a Ford Banjo, and here's the race and the 2 cone bearings in here, and you tighten your preload up with this big nut out here on the threads. And as this thing's starting to spin, it's starting to stir your ring gear, and here's your axle, and it's out here turning this huge tire, and it's trying to move this car that's 2,500 pounds. You might have your neighbor kids along, your kids. It's hard to say. So as it starts to go, it's starting to walk. It wants to walk up. It's going to try to crawl itself up that ring gear. That's the force on it, right? So Ford in 35 introduced this third pinion bearing that rides out here in the case. They actually made a special case that this bearing holds in, and that makes it really strong, keeps it from walking up. So which this third bearing actually makes this 35 and up center section of a banjo fairly strong. And if you keep going up your year list here on the top, you get to 1949, and the Olds Pontiac come out, the Olds 88, Rocket 88. 1949, they had come out with a big, strong rear end, like more conventional rear end you're used to seeing. Very strong. A lot of your traditional gasser builds would put a rear end like this in there because they're super heavy and strong. And then I don't know if Ford was building their own rear ends through the early 50s. I think it might have been like a Dana 30 they were using most of their stuff. But in 57, they come out with a 9-inch Ford. And this is, I mean, the staple of the hot rod community today of anything making a decent power. I mean, 9-inch Ford, that's, you know, or Dana. But really good way to go is the 57 9-inch Ford. And what made that really strong was this third bearing. The 9-inch Ford has the same design as the old 35 and up Banjo. So Ford brought this back, and the success of the 9-inch is a lot based on that third bearing out there to help support that pinion. So I hope that helps explain a little bit about the Ford Banjo center section. Now we can move around to the floor, and I'll show you the rear end that we're going to put in the car. So here's a quick little trick I do to identify juice brake Banjos, if it's a wide or a narrow one. So before the war or after the war, right? So you're looking at putting your tape measure right here on this bead, this weld bead. And then right over here at the Banjo, right at where the center section is, where the bell meets up, it's 23 inches. So this is a narrow one. This is a 40 Ford rear end. If that tape measure read 23 3/4 or 24-ish, it's going to be the wider 46 to 48. So I hope that helps. So on the floor here is actually a 1940 Ford Banjo that my dad bought years back. And this is the one I'm going to set the car up with at ride height, possibly run it depending on what my schedule looks like and budget. Run it at first before I can build a quick change. But if you look here, I got the hub puller set up on this side. Now, the nut is still on the end of that axle, so you want to take that nut off, of course, right there before you try to pull this hub off. But I'm just showing this. I got it mounted up here so you can see how that puller looks. And you smack out with a hammer, spin that thing around until it gets tight. And then what I normally do, you know, put some 2 good hits on it, and then put a little heat right here with a torch. Nothing cherry red, just to get it warm, and usually she'll pop right back on you. So I've always had good success using heat. It seems like going cold is tough. It's a lot of stress on stuff. But so that's how the hub comes off. And when you get that hub off, you come over to this side here, and you can see the tapered end with the keyway, and that's what it looks like when the hub comes off. So if you break that axle, the whole axle can slide right out with your hub attached to it, with your wheel, and go flying off the car. So, you know, Speedway does make some little brackets here that actually bolt in to these 2 bolts, and it's a little bracket that comes up and it catches on the flange of the drum, and that'll keep it from sliding off, but still broken axles are no good. So, and you can see here inside the drum, you can see inside there, the key is still inside the tapered hole of the drum, so that's how that goes on and what that looks like inside. But pretty beefy bearing when you think about it, like a floater style hub there. That's a lot of bearing you got to figure for the size of these cars were. And sometimes you got to worry about your race under here on the actual machined onto the bell. They kind of deteriorate and flake under here where that weight of the car is pushing down that bearing while you're riding. This one here feels really good. So, but you can actually have sleeves machined and slid over there and redo that surface to save those bells. But let's go take a look at a 9-inch Ford, and we'll get you over there and show you how it looks when they do the conversions. So over here at my dad's frame, I got a 9-inch Ford axle housing in his 32 frame, mocking it up. And so what happens is on the Banjos, what they do is they actually have these 9-inch ends, cut the ends off the Banjo, cut them off, weld these on there to accept this 9-inch style axle. And it's got the bearings pressed on here with this little sleeve, and then this retainer plate that bolts onto the axle with these bolts. So everything slides in, bolts up real nice. If you break the axle here, the wheel don't go flying off, which is cool, because that's never good. And then, so you can see this 9-inch axle is actually splined. I don't have a Banjo axle out, but a Banjo axle, it actually has one of the spider gears machined right onto the end. The flower gear is just stuck right, and that's actually what's in the diff as part of the spider gears. So when you do the 9-inch conversions like this, they have special spider gears that have the splines that accept these axle ends. So pretty sweet deal, pretty strong. So last night I was out in the garage and I get this phone call from a guy, that told me about this other gentleman that knew Howdy really well back in the day, named Bob Sugart, and he lives down in Florida, and I got a phone number, so I called him up. Super nice guy, 85 years old, a lot of memories about the car, tell me some history about it. And when he went into the Army at the end of 56, he kind of lost track of Howdy in the race scene here in Omaha, but when he came back to town out of the Army, I think in 62, he built a 32 Roadster that he called a digger. So he actually sat in the trunk like a dragster type thing. And he said that there was a guy here in town, a machinist named Shorty Cook, I believe his name was. And he modified the banjo in that Roadster, which he had the Lincoln conversions on the axles. And he had the Ford Banjo center section. And he said what happened there is the guy actually welded a bung into the side of the bell and inserted a bolt with a brass end on it somehow, and I'm assuming they had a sizable bolt. They drilled it out and they pressed a piece of brass in there. And I can show you, I'll zoom in here a little bit and show you how I did it, but it actually rested up against the ring gear so it couldn't push away. So let me readjust the camera so you can see I drew a section of it here. Okay, so here's a section of the rear end. So if you were down at ground level looking at the rear end, looking through the car, this is what you'd see if it was cut in half, okay? So here's your pinion bearing, or your pinion gear, and here's your ring gear, and here's your teeth, and this thing is spinning right this way, and it's turning this gear, and as that's doing that, it's trying to push the ring gear away from it, and it's trying to walk up the gear. It's pushing it away. So what they did is they actually welded a bung in the side of the bell with this bolt would thread through with that piece of brass in the end, and it would actually, you would run it in, he told me, and I guess there was probably some kind of jam nut out here, locking nut on the threads, which I don't have drawn. But it would come in, you'd run it until it touched the ring gear on the very outer edge there, and it would help keep that from pushing away, from separating, to help that live under hard acceleration. So pretty cool. I'd never heard that before until last night, but I guess there was a machinist here in Omaha that did it for the guys and probably knew exactly where to drill this hole and to weld that bung in, to put that bolt in. So pretty cool stuff. Just one more way to reinforce a stock banjo rear end. Thought I'd share it with you. I hope you found this information useful on the banjo rear end. As far as the banjo goes, in the 33 here, it's always had a banjo in it, as far as I can tell. Its early days, when it was first constructed, the hot rod, they had a 444 gear in it, which is the V860 gear ratio when they first put it together, and that was in 54, 55, in 50, into 55, or at some point in there they put a Columbia 2-speed in it, took it to Bonneville. They broke that rear end right off the trailer, I guess, the first run. That Columbia couldn't handle that Oldsmobile power on the big end. And then at 56, it got a banjo put back in it, just a regular banjo. And then it's later 56, when they went to Bonneville, they put a quick change in it. And then, but they didn't run that year because I guess the salt was bad, or whatever event they went to, it wasn't good to run. So 57 come around, it's had the quick change in it. They went to Bonneville in it. And then in 58, when the car got sold again, they took the quick change out and kept it. And then the car, when it became the Orange Crate, Bill Hanna, he actually put a banjo back in the car. So all through its glory days, it always had a banjo style rear end in it. So that's what we're going to put back in it. And it's probably going to be this one here just to get it going at first. And then I got a 301 quick change I'm planning on trying to make work with it. So hope you learned something. Hope you found it useful. We'll catch you next time on South Omaha Speed. Thanks for watching.